If you could open up the hood of the human psyche, just pop the latch and look at the engine
Mhm.
and point to the single greatest design flaw, what would it be? I mean, the one glitch in the system that causes all the catastrophic failures we see.
Wow, that is a massive question to start with. I think if you polled most people or even most theologians, they'd go straight to the heavy hitters. They'd say pride or greed or maybe just sin in general.
Right, the classic seven deadly sins. That's usually where the conversation starts. You just assume the problem is that we are naturally bad or selfish.
Sure, and those things are true. They are definitely part of the equation. But the argument we're looking at today takes a completely different angle. It argues that all those things, pride, greed, rebellion, they're actually downstream symptoms.
Symptoms of what?
The root cause, the real mechanical failure in the human condition, is actually a failure of memory.
Memory. So you're not talking about me forgetting where I left my car keys.
No, although that's annoying. We're talking about a specific chronic spiritual amnesia. The reality is that humans have this terrifying capacity to experience a profound deliverance, a massive breakthrough, and then almost instantly, that clarity just evaporates. We lose our grip on reality.
I find this incredibly relatable. It's the what have you done for me lately syndrome, right?
Exactly.
I can have a week where everything goes right, I feel totally secure, and then Tuesday morning hits, one email goes wrong, and my brain just resets to zero. It's like the previous week never happened.
That is precisely the mechanism at play. It's a cyclical dysfunction. We experience grace, we get a benefit, but then we forget the source of that grace. And
Yeah.
once you disconnect the benefit from the source, you drift into pride.
Because you convince yourself you did it.
You did it, and pride leads to procrastination because you lose that sense of urgency. It's the default setting of the human heart.
So that's our mission today, to trace that cycle, figure out why this memory leak happens, how it leads to this dangerous myth we tell ourselves about later.
And then get to this radical shift in thinking. From seeing ourselves as owners to seeing ourselves as stewards.
Right.
And we have to talk about the antidote, because if you don't have a system to counter this amnesia, you will drift. And the consequences are, well, they're much heavier than just having a bad day.
Okay, so let's start with the evidence. There's a specific historical case study that really proves this is hardwired into us.
The story of Israel in the desert, it is the archetype. If you look at Psalm 106, the writer is essentially doing an audit of Israel's behavior, and it's just maddening to read.
These are people who witnessed physics-defying miracles. The Red Sea parting, food appearing on the ground.
You can't get more proof than that. It's not subtle.
Wow.
You would think that would settle the issue of trust forever. And verse 12 says, then they believed his words. They sang his praise.
So they have the emotional high, the worship service on the beach. They're all in.
Fully convinced. But then verse 13 drops the hammer. But they soon forgot his works. They did not wait for his counsel.
Ugh, it's that word soon that just jumps out. It wasn't their grandkids who forgot.
No.
It was the same people who saw the water move.
Immediate evaporation.
Yeah.
The moment the pressure returned, they were thirsty, they were hungry, scared. The memory of the miracle just got overwritten by panic.
So if that's the default, if gravity is always pulling us toward forgetfulness,
Yeah.
what's the counter move? Because just trying harder to remember doesn't work.
No, willpower fails here. The word we need is deliberate. If gravity pulls you down, you have to expend energy to stand up. You have to build infrastructure for memory.
Okay.
This is why the Lord's Supper was instituted. Jesus didn't say, do this because rituals are nice. He said, do this in remembrance of me.
It's a cognitive anchor. It forces you to stop and look back.
It's a recalibration event. And this applies to why the church gathers at all. Hebrews says, exhort one another daily, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin.
The deceitfulness of sin. I like that phrasing. It suggests sin isn't just breaking a rule. It's a psychological trick.
Exactly. It tricks you into thinking the present crisis is permanent and God's past faithfulness was just a fluke. So the gathering, the singing, the preaching, it's not about checking a religious box. It is a countermeasure. You are outsourcing your memory to the community because your own is compromised.
That makes perfect sense. Alone, I drift. Together, we will remind each other what's true. But this leads to the second major flaw, doesn't it? Our memory of the past is broken, but our perception of the future is maybe even worse.
We think we have way more of it than we do. This is where we run into the myth of later.
The later lullaby. I've heard it called that. The idea that the enemy doesn't need to get you to be an atheist. He just has to get you to say, not yet.
It's the most effective weapon because it feels safe. Later doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like responsible planning.
I'll get serious about my faith later. I'll fix that relationship later.
I'll use my gifts later when I'm established. But procrastination is not a time management issue. It is a form of spiritual arrogance.
Arrogance seems strong. I usually think of it as laziness or fear.
It's arrogance because it assumes ownership of an asset you don't possess. We act like we have a warehouse full of tomorrows. But James 4 is the reality check. You do not know what tomorrow will bring.
You don't own the future.
You barely own the present breath. To assume you can do something later is to assume you are the master of time.
And there's a psychological cost to waiting too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that we might run out of time. It's that the waiting actually changes us.
It's the principle of hardening. Think of your conscience like a path in a field. The first time you ignore that prompting, the first time you say later to something you know you should do, it's hard. You feel the resistance.
You trample the grass down.
Right. And the second time...
The path's already there. It's easier.
Exactly. And eventually it's a paved road. You don't even hear the prompt anymore. That is a hardened heart. That is why 2 Corinthians says now is the favorable time, not just because the clock is ticking, but because your heart is softer now than it will be tomorrow if you say no today.
That is a chilling thought. We assume we'll be wiser when we're older, but we might just be harder.
We might lose the ability to care. Which brings us to the core conflict here. The reason we feel so comfortable saying later is because we have a fundamental misunderstanding of our status. We think we're owners.
This is the ownership versus stewardship debate. And honestly, this is where the cultural friction is highest. Everything in our society just screams ownership.
Live your best life. You earned this.
My body, my choice, my time. It's the American dream, isn't it? Autonomy.
It is the gospel of autonomy, the entrepreneur of the self.
Mm-hmm.
But the biblical assertion is, well, it's uncompromising. You own nothing.
Nothing. That's a hard sell. I mean, I work for my paycheck. I sign the mortgage papers.
In a legal sense, sure, but theologically, zero. Psalm 24. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Psalm 50 says every beast in the forest is his.
Wow.
Even your own breath, Job, says the life of every living thing is in his hand. We are not owners. We are asset managers.
Steward can feel a bit old-fashioned, but asset manager, that lands. That feels modern.
It's the perfect analogy. Imagine you're a branch manager at a bank. You're surrounded by millions of dollars. You have authority. You have agency.
But if I take a stack of cash home and buy a boat...
You go to jail. Why? Because you confused possession with ownership.
Right.
Your intellect, your influence, your money, your family, these are all capital entrusted to you by the owner to be invested for his interests, not your private enjoyment.
So this flips the script on 1 Peter 4.10, where it says to use your gifts as good stewards. It implies that if I use my gifts just for myself, I'm essentially embezzling.
That is the implication. It's why the early apostles, men like Paul and Peter, didn't call themselves leaders or influencers. They used the word doulos, bondservant, someone who has no property rights over themselves.
You are not your own. You were bought with a price. That's 1 Corinthians.
It is countercultural in the extreme. But here's the key. Until you settle the ownership question, until you accept you're a manager, you will always misuse the resources. And that is dangerous because managers get audited.
And this is where things get uncomfortable, because if we're managers, there's a performance review.
Right. The owner shows up eventually and asks, what did you do with my capital?
This brings us to the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. I think we often read this as a nice story about doing your best.
Yeah.
But the ending is pretty terrifying.
It's a horror story for the complacent. You have 3 servants. 2 invest the money and get a return. 1 plays it safe. He digs a hole and buries the talent.
And the master doesn't say, hey, at least you didn't lose it.
No, he calls him wicked and slothful. Wicked seems incredibly harsh for a guy who is just risk-averse.
He didn't steal it. He just hid it.
Yeah. It seems harsh until you view it through the lens of stewardship. He took a resource meant for growth and made it sterile. He wasted the master's capital. But look at the consequence. This is the use it or lose it principle. Take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents.
So the spiritual principle is that gifts are revocable.
Absolutely. Liquidity moves to where it's being used. If you refuse to use a resource for the owner's glory, the owner has the right to transfer that resource to a manager who will deploy it.
We see this with the church in Ephesus in Revelation, don't we? They're warned that their lampstand will be removed.
Yes, which effectively means their influence, their light, their very reason for being is pulled. It's not cruelty, it's effective management.
There is another layer to this losing it concept that is just unavoidable. The aging factor.
This is the biological reality of the later lullaby. Ecclesiastes 12 says, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth." Why? Because the evil days come. It refers to physical decline.
We see this in the retirement mindset. I'll serve God when I retire. I'll go on that mission trip when I have the pension and the free time.
But by then, the asset has depreciated. Your energy is lower. Your physical mobility is compromised. The tragedy is reaching the end of your life, finally having the will to serve, but realizing you no longer have the capacity you had 20 years ago.
You had the energy, but not the heart. Now you have the heart, but not the energy.
That is the very definition of regret.
Okay, that is heavy. And I imagine for some listening, that triggers a bit of panic. Have I already wasted too much? Is it too late?
We have to be balanced here. The goal isn't despair, it's action. Psalm 90 says, "Teach us to number our days." The idea is, assess what you have left. Nothing is wasted in Christ if we start now. If you have breath, if you have a voice, if you have any resources left, pour them out now. Don't mourn the lost years so much that you waste the remaining ones.
So use it before you lose it. Applies to whatever inventory remains.
Exactly. Urgent mobilization.
We've established the problem. We forget. We establish the lie. We think we have time. We establish the stakes. We are managers being audited. Now, what's the fix? What's the specific solution to stop the drifting?
The antidote to spiritual amnesia is prayer. But, and this is crucial, not prayer as we often practice it.
Right, we need to redefine this because usually prayer is, here's my shopping list of needs, please sign here. It's transactional.
That's low-level prayer. We're talking about prayer as relationship and memory refreshment. Think about it. If the core problem is forgetting reality, prayer is the deliberate act of remembering.
It connects back to that pray without ceasing command. I've always found that intimidating. It sounds like I need to be muttering under my breath all day.
It's not nonstop vocalization, it's an open line. Think of it like a phone call that you never hang up. You might not be talking every second, but you're aware the other person is on the line. You're in their presence.
It's an ambient awareness.
And that awareness anchors you. Psalm 77 talks about remembering the deeds of the Lord in the place of prayer. It prevents the drift. When you're constantly checking in with the owner, you're less likely to act like you own the place.
And there's a promised result to this, the peace promise.
Philippians 4. When we turn anxiety into prayer, the peace of God guards the heart and mind. The Greek word there is a military term. It's a sentry.
So peace isn't just a warm feeling, it's a defensive garrison.
It shields the mind from the lies. It shields the memory from the amnesia. And critically, it connects back to the later problem, Matthew 26. Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. Prayer keeps you alert. It stops the lullaby. You don't sleep through your opportunities because you're in constant contact with the command center.
It's about abiding, just holding on to the vine.
That's it. If we sever that connection, the sap stops flowing, the memory fades. We drift back into that ownership mindset. We start burying our talents, and we wake up wondering where all the time went.
Let's bring this in for a landing. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. The arc is clear. We're designed to forget. That forgetfulness leads to the arrogance of later. We mistake stewardship for ownership, and if we aren't careful, we lose the very capacity to serve.
But the anchor is this life of constant relational prayer. Not to get stuff, but to keep the memory fresh, to keep the heart soft.
To ensure that when the master returns, he finds us investing, not hiding.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought. There's this image of the wise virgins from Matthew 25. Half were prepared, half were scrambling at the last minute.
And the door was shut on those who were scrambling. It is the ultimate cautionary tale against thinking you can fix it later.
So here's the challenge for you to carry with you today. Do an audit. Look at your resources, your time, your specific talent, your money. Identify one talent that you are currently burying.
And ask yourself, if that talent was recalled tomorrow, if the master asked for the account, what would be your biggest regret?
Don't wait for later to answer that. Thanks for joining the conversation.
A pleasure.